I had three victims that I've been working with, victims of the Carters, that were ready to come forward. This might help them feel a little more confident now. So this is great. Everything you see about him is an illusion. But what he loves the most is controlling youth.
Fact check me. And Jaguar has more information than I do. So to anybody who discredits her is really doesn't know what's going on, because she has more information than I could even dream of having, because I'm sure, without even speaking.
For 15 years, the same story has been repeated again and again. Rihanna, painted as the innocent victim. Jay-Z, seen as the mentor stepping in to guide. Chris Brown, labeled as the one who ruined everything. But what if that version isn't the full truth? What if key details were left out, twisted, or buried?
Been evading, but the thing is, everyone in the backdrop knew that he was the celebrity John Doe. Everybody knew that. They knew it when I did Pierce Morgan.
Is Beyonce celebrity B?
I hope to God not, but she was around.
Mm.
And she's very... she's got enough on her plate. After everything that happened with the election and everything that's happening right now, I'm not going to dump on that woman. She got better fish to fry.
Well,
what I
look,
will say is that her husband, she knows exactly who he is.
Jaguar Wright is now challenging everything people thought they knew, flipping the narrative in a way that raises serious questions. Because sometimes the person presented as the victim isn't telling the whole story, and the one behind the scenes might not be who people think. The claims being brought forward suggest there's more complexity here than the public ever saw. Now, go back to the beginning, but strip away the polished image people were given. Imagine a 16-year-old artist from Barbados traveling across the world into an environment filled with power and pressure, late nights, high expectations, and an industry that can be overwhelming for anyone, especially someone that young. No matter how you look at it, that kind of situation raises real concerns about guidance, protection, and the kind of influence surrounding a rising star at such a critical moment. I had 3 people I've been working with, all claiming they were harmed by the Carters, and they were finally ready to step forward. Now, this situation might give them the push they needed to speak up, and that changes everything. What you see on the surface with him is just that, a surface. Behind it, there's something way more calculated going on, especially when it comes to influence and control over younger talent. And that's where things start to look questionable. Check the facts. Jaguar has even more insight than I do, and anyone trying to discredit her clearly doesn't understand the full picture. She's sitting on information most people couldn't even imagine having, and that says a lot without me needing to spell it all out. For 15 years, the same story has been the same. Repeated again and again. Rihanna, painted as the innocent victim. Jay-Z, seen as the mentor stepping in to guide. Chris Brown, labeled as the one who ruined everything. But what if that version isn't the full truth? What if key details were left out, twisted, or buried? Jaguar Wright is now challenging everything people thought they knew, flipping the narrative in a way that raises serious questions. Because sometimes The person presented as the victim isn't telling the whole story, and the one behind the scenes might not be who people think. The claims being brought forward suggest there's more complexity here than the public ever saw. Now go back to the beginning, but strip away the polished image people were given. Imagine a 16-year-old artist from Barbados traveling across the world into an environment filled with power and pressure, late nights, high expectations, and an industry that can be overwhelming for anyone, especially someone that young, no matter how you look. Add it, that kind of situation raises real concerns about guidance, protection, and the kind of influence surrounding a rising star at such a critical moment. Listen closely to Rihanna's own words, because what she describes sounds simple on the surface, but the details tell a different story. She calls it an audition, but pay attention to what slips through. The pressure, the isolation, the feeling of being stuck there until a decision was made. That's not just a casual meeting. That's an environment where power and control start to show up in a serious way. Now hear Jay-Z himself, years later, speaking on it like it was just part of the process. He said, "We didn't let her leave without signing." Think about that for a second. A grown man openly saying a teenager wasn't allowed to walk out without agreeing to a contract that would shape her entire future. That doesn't sound like a normal business deal. It raises real questions about pressure and consent in that moment. And then there's what happened after. Rihanna reportedly couldn't sleep for 3 days straight after that meeting. 3 days! That's not how someone reacts to a typical opportunity or big break. When your body can't rest like that, it usually means something overwhelming happened, something your mind is still trying to process while your body is already reacting. Jaguar Wright takes it even further and adds more layers to the story. She claims Rihanna may have been even younger, possibly around 15 when this all started, placed in a situation far beyond what someone that age should be dealing with. A teenager, alone in a corporate setting for hours, surrounded by powerful figures in an industry known for pressure and influence. 4 hours in that kind of environment is not small, especially for someone still growing and learning how the world works. According to these claims, things didn't slow down after the contract either. Rihanna was quickly brought into adult spaces, events, and environments at a very young age. Instead of protection, the atmosphere around her allegedly normalized things that someone her age shouldn't have been exposed to so early. That kind of environment can shape how a person sees everything moving forward. And here's where it gets even more intense. There are claims that when people in the industry tried to question what was happening or raise concerns, they were pushed out or ignored. Even major career moments, like award shows, are now being looked at differently by some people, questioning whether certain actions were supportive or controlling. It makes you look twice and wonder what was really going on behind the scenes. This isn't being framed as a simple rise to fame story anymore. It's being described as a system, one where power, influence, and control played a huge role in shaping careers and decisions. And according to Jaguar, Rihanna eventually learned how that system worked from the inside, which adds another layer of complexity to everything being discussed. But the claims don't stop with just one person. The bigger picture being painted here suggests a pattern, not an isolated situation. Jaguar points toward multiple names and situations, suggesting repeated behavior across different time periods. And one of the most shocking parts of these claims involves the people closest to the situation. Jaguar alleges that Beyoncé was aware of far more than the public realizes, that she witnessed these patterns over time and chose not to speak out. That idea alone flips the public image many people have held for years and forces a much deeper conversation about loyalty, power, and silence in high-level circles. She also brings up other past connections, claiming similar patterns may have existed with other young artists early in their careers. Multiple names, different moments, but what's being suggested is the same type of behavior repeating itself. And according to these claims, not every situation played out the same, especially when someone didn't go along with expectations. That's where things take an even darker turn in this narrative. Because the suggestion is that rejection didn't always end quietly, and that certain moments in history might need to be looked at again with fresh eyes. When you line up the timelines and the claims being made, it starts to form a picture that raises a lot of uncomfortable questions. Beyoncé at 15, Aaliyah at 16, Rihanna at 15. When people line those ages up, they don't see coincidence. They see a pattern being claimed over and over again. The accusation being pushed here is that this wasn't random. It was calculated. A repeated approach tied to power and access in the industry. That's a serious claim, and it's exactly why it keeps getting attention. But the story being told doesn't stop there. Industry insider Jonathan Hay has also spoken about Jay-Z, hinting at behavior behind the scenes that made even close associates uncomfortable. Dame Dash, someone who built alongside him, eventually distanced himself, and people have speculated for years about what caused that split. When longtime partners separate like that, it always raises questions about what was happening out of public view. And this is where the narrative gets even heavier. The claims suggest it's not just about who was targeted, but also about how people around him responded. According to this version of events, Beyoncé didn't just witness things, she stayed aligned with him as their empire grew bigger and stronger. Every success, every deal, every moment in the spotlight added another layer to their influence, and critics of this narrative say that silence played a role in maintaining that image. The argument being made is that there was a choice at some point: speak out and risk everything, or stay quiet and protect what had been built. And, according to these claims, the decision was to protect the empire. That idea alone is what makes this conversation so intense, because it challenges the public image people have held for years. Now look at how control is being described in this narrative. It goes beyond contracts and business moves. The claim is that influence extended into behavior, appearances, and even small public gestures. For example, people point to moments like performances or events and analyze body language, trying to read between the lines and figure out what's genuine and what might be pressure. One example often brought up is Rihanna at the Super Bowl, with some Mardik questioning whether certain gestures were truly voluntary or influenced. Then there's the financial side being discussed. The claim here is that everything, from branding to public appearances, is tightly managed to protect a larger system. Not just partnerships, but structured control over image, messaging, and business decisions. According to this narrative, every move is calculated to maintain a certain perception. It doesn't stop at business either, at least according to these allegations. There are also serious claims about toxic dynamics behind closed doors, though it's important to note these remain unverified and heavily disputed. Still, they continue to circulate, adding to the overall picture being painted by those pushing this story. And then comes one of the most talked about moments, the elevator incident involving Solange. That situation shocked everyone when it first surfaced, but now people are revisiting it with new interpretations. Some believe Solange wasn't just reacting in the moment, but pushing back against something bigger happening behind the scenes. After that incident, people noticed changes. The once very visible closeness between Beyoncé and Solange seemed different, and that shift has fueled even more speculation. Whether those changes were personal, professional, or completely unrelated depends on who you ask, but in this narrative, it's framed as part of a larger pattern of influence and separation. And while all of this was unfolding, the claim is that others in the circle were watching, learning, and adapting. According to this version of events, the system being described didn't just affect one person, it shaped multiple careers and relationships over time. Now the story takes an even sharper turn, because the next part isn't just about influence or control, it's about how public moments can be interpreted in completely different ways depending on what people believe is happening behind the scenes. Watch this closely. This is Rihanna's 2009 ABC News interview with Diane Sawyer, the moment that shifted everything in the public eye. People saw emotion, vulnerability, and strength all at once, but others now question if there was more going on beneath the surface. The timing, the delivery, the impact, it all hit with serious force. Some critics argue that the way she spoke sounded extremely polished, almost too precise. Every phrase lined up with what people expect to hear in situations like that. Statements about strength, responsibility, and survival. To many, that's just someone telling their truth, but to others, it raises questions about preparation and messaging. The words landed exactly how they needed to, and the public response followed immediately. Then, look at how Chris Brown was framed in that moment. Not just as someone involved in a serious incident, but as a wider threat in the eyes of the public. That interview didn't just affect his situation, it reshaped his entire image overnight. Whether intentional or not, the impact was massive, and it changed the direction of his career in a way that couldn't be undone, and the timing made it even more intense. The interview aired right when he was trying to move forward and rebuild his reputation. One major appearance, one powerful narrative, and everything shifted again. Some people see that as coincidence, others see it as perfectly timed media strategy. Either way, the effect was immediate and long-lasting. Now here's where the conversation takes a turn. Some voices, including Jaguar Wright, claim that what people witnessed wasn't just a personal account, but something more structured. They question whether there was guidance behind the scenes, shaping how the story was presented to the world. Who influenced the messaging? Who helped craft the narrative? Those are the questions being raised. But it's important to be clear, these are allegations and interpretations, not proven facts. Still, they continue to circulate because of how powerful that moment was and how much it influenced public perception. The bigger claim being pushed is that while attention stayed locked on Chris Brown, other powerful figures avoided that same level of scrutiny. That idea suggests the spotlight can sometimes be directed in ways that benefit certain people while damaging others. Whether that's true or not depends on perspective. But it's a point that keeps coming up in these discussions. And then the narrative expands even further. Some claim this wasn't just about one situation, but part of a much larger pattern involving influence, reputation control, and removing threats. Multiple names get brought into the conversation, along with different events over the years, all being tied together into one larger theory. You'll hear references to industry fallout, broken partnerships, and even tragic events being connected under this same lens. But this is where things become extremely serious and highly speculative. Claims about people being eliminated or events being orchestrated are not supported by verified evidence, and they remain controversial and widely disputed. Still, those pushing this narrative point to what they see as a pattern. First, someone's credibility gets questioned, then their image takes a hit, and eventually they fade out of the spotlight. That sequence is what fuels these theories, even though hard proof is lacking. Chris Brown's situation is often used as the most visible example because of how public and immediate it was. His downfall happened in real time, in front of the entire world, making it one of the most talked about moments in modern music history. Supporters of these claims also point to industry insiders like Jonathan Hay, who have shared their own perspectives on what happens behind closed doors. When people who were close to these environments speak out, it adds another layer to the conversation, even if their statements are debated. Then the focus shifts again, this time toward the idea of transformation. The claim here is that Rihanna didn't just remain in one role, but evolved over time within the system being described. From a newcomer navigating a powerful industry to someone who understood how it worked at the highest levels. That idea is where things get the most controversial, because it suggests not just survival, but adaptation, learning how the system operates and using that knowledge moving forward. Some frame that as growth and resilience, while others frame it in a much darker way. And that's the core of this entire narrative being pushed. It raises a difficult question that keeps people debating. When someone stands in the spotlight speaking as a victim, are they simply telling their story, or is there a larger structure influencing how that story is told and received? That question doesn't come with an easy answer, And it's exactly why this topic continues to spark so much attention and controversy. So after everything laid out, all the claims, all the timelines, all the questions, one thing is clear: this story is far from simple. There are layers, perspectives, and narratives all clashing at once. And not everything is proven, but not everything can be ignored either. What you choose to believe comes down to how you see the details, the sources, and the bigger picture behind the industry itself. Because at this level, power, influence, and image all collide in ways most people never get to see. So now the real question is, are these just rumors and speculation, or is there something deeper hiding in plain sight? That's for you to decide.